Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for the amazing work you've already done this morning. Thank you very much for all the amazing work you've done this morning, for jumping in on the spiritual practices in your sessions and the working groups. And we're gonna get the track leads to put their heads together after this afternoon session to get a sense of direction. And then tomorrow morning, one last session, and we'll be rolling up the reports for a full report back at the end tomorrow around 1 o'clock. I want to introduce to you, we have an amazing session today. I want to introduce you the host of our session, who's one of the members of our advisory board, Asia de Coteau. I always got to make sure I'm saying the name. Asia de Coteau, named after the Steely Dan album, just so you know. And she is the executive director of the, I always want to call her the president or the chairperson, but she's the executive director of the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, and also an alumnus of this school, and an amazing leader in the field of tribal co-management, breaking new grounds, building amazing new coalitions among tribes, managing rivers and fish in our Pacific Northwest. So with that, I'd like to welcome Asia de Coteau.
Thank you, Michael, and it is really my honor and privilege to be in front of you today to introduce this next panel, which I'm very excited about. So with that, we're going to start with two people that we'll call up. The first is Ngunguk. He is a shaman, also known as Uncle. He is a shaman, a traditional healer, storyteller, and carrier of the wind drum. His family belongs to the traditional healers from the Kalaalleq Nunaat, Greenland, and his engagement for the environment and indigenous issues have brought him to over 70 countries in the world. His spiritual task, given by his mother, is to melt the ice in the heart of men. And with that, I would like to invite Ngunguk up here to share a song with us.
Did my makeup work? Do I look okay? I thought I'd put too much makeup. I'm so happy to be with you here today. My name is Ngunguk, and it means the man who looks like his uncle. Yes, I do look like my father's brother, older brother. And his name is Koyegi, which means the beloved one. So I'm really happy to be here with you and finding new family. I am from the ground zero of climate change, a country called Greenland. There's a big ice. And the other day, I turned 77. When I was born, it was on the average 5 kilometers thick, the big ice. But now it's down to 2 and the maximum 3 kilometers, which means that somewhere in the world, the earth is getting warmer, that it's melting big ice. So we've been wondering, and my elders have been asking me over the years, what is happening in the world? How come they're living the way they do and make the big ice melt so fast? If we do not stop it now, many coastal cities, people had to move out. Probably in my lifetime. And can we really afford it? To have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands people moving away from this beach. I don't think the United States government can afford it. And they are known to be the richest country in the world. I don't think many European countries can afford to have so many people coming from the refugees of the climate. So we have come to the point where I feel personally we had to make up our mind, what shall we do? not just for us here, but for the world we live on. There's only one earth and mankind her citizen. It's not just us in the north. You are the citizen of this world. And we don't even know each other. Not one person said good morning to me today. Not one. It's like I just walked by and nobody saw me. This is why I put makeup on, so I could look better. So you can notice that I'm here. But it didn't work. We have become so far apart from each other. And if you really want to do something about roadmaps for resistance and resilience and thriving, we're going to have to get to know each other. If we do not know each other, how can we change the world we live in? How can you and I become mankind, citizen of this earth? Do you want to be separate? Or do you want to be part of the world? Can we see hands? Does anybody want to be different? Or does everybody want to be citizens of earth? 15, 16, 17, 19 people choose to live as citizens of the earth. Isn't it exciting? And that's how we need to be. And I'm going to be going home now on Sunday. And that big mountain in front of my home, when I was born, is 5 kilometers. It's now maybe 1 kilometer. That means other people in the world are suffering of climate change. One side is too dry, the other side is too wet. But that goes without saying. When one is dry, the opposite side will be wet. Both of them cannot be dry. So I would love you and I to think differently. We do have a chance to do something different. Not the same old stuff as yesterday. You go into one of the most important schools of this earth. It's called Yale University, considered to be high end of all universities in the world. So you have responsibility. That's why you choose this place here, to learn from. But that responsibility needs to be acted upon. It's not enough knowing. It's to do something about what you know. So I hope, and I really send up my prayer, that somehow you and I, we can get to know each other. Yes, I need a lot of makeup. You don't. Because you're so beautiful to begin with. But I do need makeup. Because I want to be as beautiful as you are. Not only in the looks, not only in the mind, but in the spirit. And that's what counts. Your spirit. Collaboration, cooperation, helping and assisting each other to do something about climate change. When I spoke about it in the United Nations about 40 years ago, I got a standing ovation. But nobody changed. I was with, you guys are too young to know, but those old people here, do you remember that someone called Nelson Mandela? You do. Nelson Mandela was a really important person on this earth. He came to visit. It was so interesting. We hugged each other. And we sat there together for an hour and a half, arm in arm. And then he took, of course, I do the ceremony with my drums, welcoming him to the Arctic. He was just flying from Los Angeles to England, and he stopped over my village in the far north. So the police called me and said, "Uncle, Nelson Mandela is coming. You need to come and meet him." So I did the ceremony welcoming Nelson Mandela. He was standing on top of the airplane door and want me one step down. So I hugged him. That was beautiful. So I did the ceremony with him, welcoming him to our land. He had ordered some food, seals and whales, Arctic char, salmons, because he wanted to eat Eskimo food. So I did. I got my elders to prepare things, and we sat there at the airport and ate some of the food. And then, of course, I do the ceremony with him. Then after a little while, his wife went to another room with other people. Him and I sitting together at the airport lounge. And he looked at my drums. And then he says, "Uncle, can I try?" Says, of course. So I showed him how to do it. And then he picked it up. Like that. And he was getting ready. And then he put it down. And he looked at me, "Uncle, I would like to sing my grandmother's song." And then again, he put it up and then put them down again. And then he said, "Uncle, I have not been chanting it for 28 years. So he started singing his grandmother's song and immediately started crying. Can you imagine to sit with Nelson Mandela and in front of you, this amazing man crying, remembering his grandmother and her song? He finished one. Then he dried himself and then he smiles. "Uncle, can I sing one more?" So, if you want to feel his energy, come and touch him. Nelson Mandela sang 2 songs on his drums. That's called "Melting the Ice in the Heart of Man." Only by melting the ice in the heart of man, man will have a chance to change and begin using his knowledge wisely. That's the words of my mother. And you and I need to get to know each other better. After all, we are the citizens of the same earth. And what we have done to Mother Earth is changing climate so badly that many millions will not have homes. I said homes. Why? Because many places on earth will not be palatable for living. Is that really true? It is true. So think of it when we talk about environmental joy conference. How do we do that better than yesterday?
Thank you so much, Uncle. That was incredibly powerful, and I really felt that. The next presenter and speaker for this panel that I'd like to present is Helena Walinga. She is an indigenous advocate and storyteller from the Quechua community of Sarayaku in Ecuador's Amazon. She is a global voice on indigenous rights and environmental conservation. Renowned for her advocacy, Helena spearheads significant campaigns against extractive industries, playing a crucial role in preserving biodiversity across Latin America. Her dedication extends to working with Colectivo de Jóvenes en Defensa de la Amazonia, which is a youth collective that unites Amazonian youth in the fight to safeguard their rainforest homeland. And with that, I'd like to introduce Helena to come up to the stage.
Thank you so much. That was really powerful. And I come from what can seem the complete opposite of Greenland, from the rainforest. It's not cold, it's pretty hot and humid. But we too suffer from the consequences of climate change. And I think it's everywhere. And I come from the Quechua people of Sarayaku, and for as long as I can remember, we've been fighting against oil. The year that I was born was the first time the helicopters landed on a small beach down the river, and the oil workers tried to enter our community without our consent. And during this time, I grew up amidst a lot of turmoil and a lot of challenge and a lot of uncertainty and fear. But at the same time, I had the most beautiful childhood out in the rainforest with my family, with my cousins, living in a place where the rivers were clean, where there were trees to climb, where there was a living and healthy forest around me. I obviously didn't realize back then how unique that was and how that reality was threatened. I knew that there was a looming threat, but as a child, you don't necessarily comprehend what that means or to what extent that threat is. And so, for the first 10 years of my life, I watched my community struggle against the oil companies. And I think it's important to remember that in a country like Ecuador, the oil company, because of our economic dependency, it is one of the biggest powers in the country, and then also the state backed that up. And so there are multiple efforts of militarizing our territory, of harassing our people, of attacks and threats on the leaders. And throughout this, we remained resilient, and my people and the leaders knocked on every single door possible. And there were so many no's and so many people that said either your fight is impossible or this just isn't our issue. This is not our focus. The tribunals or the courts said that we don't really see a case here. This is not really possible. 10 years later, my community won an incredible court case in the Inter-American Court of Human Rights against the Ecuadorian state, which set a huge precedent for indigenous people's rights, the right to free, prior, and informed consent throughout, and this is, sets huge precedent for Latin America and for Ecuador. And I think as a fruit of that, we've seen a lot of more victories in Ecuador as some kind of domino effect. But this, unfortunately, isn't the end of the oil industry in Ecuador. The reason why my community opposed the oil industry in the first place was because we saw the environmental crimes that Chevron Texaco committed in the northern Ecuadorian Amazon. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar, but it's one of the world's most devastating man-made disasters. And so we had that story, we had seen it. I also recently visited that place, and the stories of the people there, it's heartbreaking, and it's still 20 years later, 30 years later, it's still very much a reality that impacts people and their health and their children and their communities. And I started thinking about, like, how is it that it's so clear for us that we shouldn't destroy the rainforest, but there is people that want to destroy this place. I couldn't really comprehend that, because living up in the rainforest and seeing like everything that it does for you, it just doesn't make sense. It's like just so logical to preserve it. But there are unfortunately efforts out there that are trying to constantly attack indigenous lands, not just in the Amazon, but across the world. And in my community, we have this belief system that is based on understanding the forest as a living being. And I think it sets the foundation for everything that follows. It's called Kausaksacha, which means living forest, which recognizes everything in the forest, from the mountains to the rivers to the animals to the trees to the plants to everything visible and invisible, as a living being that is equal to us, who we have some kind of symbiosis, and who we are interconnected to. And kind of understanding that, I think that has now, in Ecuador at least, been translated to what the Western world can understand, which is the rights of nature. And that is in Ecuador, it's a legal term now. And I remember people used to ask me about rights of nature a few years ago, like, oh, you're the first country in the world to have the rights of nature in your constitution. Does it make any difference? And of course I was like, no, because it didn't seem like it was making a difference, because it's been there for like a few years only. Now it actually is. And I think it really shows the importance of translating those kinds of concepts into language that can be understood by this world. And I think that is one of the big challenges that you guys, people in this room, are going to be facing, understanding how can we make sure that we interpret the world, understand the world in a way that can be translated into the language and the mindsets that unfortunately kind of run the system in a way. And that is the way to disrupt it. Last year, I worked on this incredible campaign. I talked a little bit about it earlier this morning. How many of you were in the session that I was speaking at? Okay, so a few of you are already familiar with it, but I worked on this incredible campaign. And the reason why I like bringing up this campaign when I speak is because I think it really teaches something. And I think everyone should definitely go and look it up after, because I think it really changes our what we believe we can achieve when it comes to climate justice and climate action. There's this place called the Yasuni National Park in Ecuador. It's the largest national park in the country. It's in the Amazon. It's home to 3 of indigenous groups that are in voluntary isolation. And it's also considered one of the most biodiverse or actually the most biodiverse place on this planet, according to several studies. And this place, it's been a hot debate on this place for basically 2 decades now in Ecuador, for a decade at least. When in 2007, the president at the time proposed a kind of exchange of rich countries giving money to Ecuador in exchange for conservation. This didn't happen because of lack of transparency on part of the Ecuadorian government. And basically what happened is that they ended up drilling oil there. And at the time, Ecuador had a new constitution which allowed for people to call for referendums if you just got enough signatures. And so a lot of young people aged 18 to 25 mobilized, and I think they got almost 1 million signatures. It was like around 800,000 or 900,000 signatures in order to call for this referendum. Huge grassroots efforts, people being out on the streets. And they were denied because the judicial system that was supposed to review this was corrupt. And 10 years later, this was, by the way, when I was like around 11, 12. 10 years later, last year, in June, we start hearing these rumors about this referendum taking place, and we know that there's a presidential election happening in the next on August 20th. This is like 2 months away, and we didn't really know, so we started like kind of trying to talk to people, like, is this real, is it not? And we find out, yes, it is real. And I mean, this is kind of like, it's kind of like, I mean, we were like shocked because, I mean, this is a huge opportunity, but there is a huge challenge here. How are we going to make sure that people even know what they're voting on? Ecuador's voting population is a young population, and they don't know what the Yasuni National Park is, or the history of it, or the momentum that it had 10 years earlier, because they were kids. And even if they do know about it, the country has, I mean, I'm not sure how much you have heard about Ecuador, but it's been really challenging in Ecuador for the past few years. A lot of violence, a lot of crisis in general. I mean, right now there's like 14-hour power outages. It's been really challenging times. How do you make people vote on this? And so we gathered and realized that me and the youth collective that I work with, we're in a very unique position where we know most players within kind of the environmental space. We are, because we grew up in an indigenous movement, we are part of it. We know the leaders, we know the elders, we know kind of everyone involved. We know the NGOs that are usually working on environmental things in Ecuador. We know the grassroots movements. We know the people that collected the signatures. Okay, why is everyone working on different fronts, and why don't we unite these fronts? And that was basically the task that we took upon. And it was very, very interesting because, yes, there were like individual efforts going out, and there were like individuals that also, you know, they were doing their own thing, which is great because this was everyone's campaign. There was no person, no group that could say, oh, this is something that we did. It was all collective work, people from across the country, people from all backgrounds, indigenous peoples, non-indigenous peoples, really just coming together to make sure that, one, we inform people about it, and two, try to kind of like incline them to a certain vote. And we weren't really talking to the people that had already decided what they were going to vote on. We were talking to people that either didn't know or were open to like learning. And I mean, it was a tough 2 months of just campaigning, and everyone poured their soul into it. We toured the country. We did like media, I don't know, like several times a day for months or for weeks. And in the end, we didn't really know what was going to happen, but in the end, on August 20th, 60% of the voters voted on Yasuni to be protected. And the reason why I always bring this story up is because this is the first time of a real climate democracy. Because it's not even just a project that is about to happen. It's not about stopping a project that is about to drill somewhere, which is equally important, which is like, that's what we usually do, is that we're working to stop projects. But this is the first time that we were able to work on something that is, okay, there is oil, they're drilling, there is actually more oil in there, but we're just gonna stop because it's not right. There is no other reason for us to stop with the oil drilling there, just because it's not right. It's not okay to do this to the environment. It's not okay to do it to the people there. It's not aligned with the climate goals that we have. And we also need to start somewhere. Like, have you thought about like when like we are basically forced to transition, because that day will come? In Ecuador, it will be because, I mean, oil, we're going to run out of oil. But in other parts, it's because the climate crisis, the planetary boundaries, we're seeing how far we've gone, and we're going to see how we cannot like continue to push those. And so once we're forced to do it, how are we going to actually shut down these enormous infrastructures? And that's what we're facing right now in Ecuador when we're working to make sure that they actually like meet the people's vote, or like or follow through with this. What's also important here is that this referendum is binding for the government, and so if they don't like actually follow through with it, then there is a risk of being impeached, which is why the discourse of the government will always be, yes, we're going to follow through, but they just keep pushing it. But that's kind of where, again, advocacy groups and environmentalists come in to kind of push back on that. And that's going to be a long struggle. I'm not saying that everything is set and now oil is going to leave the Yasuni National Park, but it's a huge step. And I think this for me is just, I think like it really just instills hope in me and everyone that I worked with to see that, okay, it's really possible. And it really shows what happens when like people like actually like work collectively. And what our role as kind of the people that were in between were also to kind of make sure that people could work together, because there's so many differences, and we have, even in this room, I'm pretty sure we have a lot of differences, and some people have their own agendas, they have their own kind of niche thing that they're working on, or we have different ideas about politics. But once we set those things aside and we understand, okay, this is something that we can work on together, and yes, I'm gonna have to swallow some words sometimes, then things can actually happen. And I think that was an incredible experience for me. And in all of this, I mean, for me, the most important thing when I was working with all these groups was making sure that, yes, we have different collaborators and allies and so forth, but what we're not negotiating on is the indigenous people's rights to talk for, like, speak on behalf of ourselves, our right to sovereignty. We're not going to let people co-opt the struggles that we've been dealing with for decades now, and really understand how these different allies play into what is actually justice within, like, the environmental and climate struggles. And I think I'm going to leave it there because I think I'm meeting my time maybe. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about anything after this session. But I think it's just like, I've worked in many campaigns and I've worked in a lot of efforts, and I think that one is just, I think if we just look into how this specific moment changed things in Ecuador, I think there's just a lot to learn from that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Helena, and also to Uncle. Can we give another round of applause for our plenary panel? So that concludes our panel today. I'm going to hand it over to Michael to do some housekeeping. I know we're a little behind schedule, so we won't have the break, but we'll get directions from our leader.
Thank you. And amazing sessions. Thank you very much. Just the stories that we need, for sure, as we go forward. So I hope the morning was productive for everybody. I know a lot of people did a lot of work, a lot of flip charts and discussions. We're going to continue now with the second session. Same tracks. You can change tracks if you want, or stick with the one you started with. We'll have another hour and a half. If you can go pretty much straight to your session now, let's say starting around 3, the same 3 rooms, but the topics have shifted rooms. And the folks, I think, at the entrance will show you how. Do we know what room is which topic? This room is which one? Do we know? The intergenerational track will be here. The land loss track is, do we know what room? Marsh, which is that way. And then the last track is the Powering Justice, which will be in Bowers, in that room over there, in the brown building immediately to our right. And tomorrow they'll be once again switched so that everybody will be in each room once at least. Please keep interacting. Please keep generating knowledge and information. We'll start the optional session of how can Yale help a little bit late. We'll let this run for an hour and a half. Then there'll be an optional session, and at 5:30 the entertainment starts. And when I say entertainment, we have 2 world-famous Afro-eco-futurist artists exhibiting video displays they've made in the back, and one of New York's hottest young curators, Paul Hill, 30 under 30, Vogue, OpenAI, my incredibly hot dude, who happens to be the son of a friend of mine, will be giving a curated talk on Afro-ecofuturism. And there'll also be some of Yale's greatest performance groups and wine and stuff like that. And of course, the party at the New Haven at 8 o'clock tonight. And then tomorrow we'll come back together again for another plenary with Justin Pearson, another breakout, a report out from all of us, and also Centering Justice. For those of you at universities, there's a collective of universities doing community-based research that's co-convening a session tomorrow. It's on the agenda to talk about the future, given the election, of community-university partnerships. So thank you all, and keep on keeping on. Thank you.
I just want the cool that thing. What's right? You tell me. From the side? Okay. I mean, I kind of want... I can try to... Oh, sorry. Are they good? Okay, do you want to do one more? Dude. Sorry.
We can lower the podium.
You can? Okay. Perfect. There you go. Oh, wait, there might be... Okay. I think it's fine. Right there. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sure they're great. Yeah. Sure, we can do one with the camera too. Aw, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's me. Really enjoyed it. I'm a student here. This is really resonating with us.
Aw, thank you. What's best for you? Is it WhatsApp or
What's up? So it's
where are you from?
I'm between Kenya and South Africa.
I was trying to I'm good at accent solution.
I have a different Send me a WhatsApp. Since you're on I've been interested in I'm interested in if you need people.
I'll show you someone who is really into. He does a lot of work.
Do you also
Oh yeah, it is public. It's a public presence. And they do a lot of good work. They're a lot in the Amazon and a lot in the Bahamas.
Okay.
Yeah. So usually he's more tropical.
in Savannah and my Israel place.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. And it's just my name, so you can.
Awesome. Yeah, have a good conference.
Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Hi. Wow. Hi.
So, the kind of, I guess, the almost scarf with it. And then let's just flip onto one side of the scarf. Perfect. And then when you're ready, there's a toggle on the top. You can stay on the entire time. You're welcome. Not a problem. Oh yeah. So are you gonna be up here with
We're just being present. Yes, and the last one is tomorrow. So it's that. Yeah. Michael's not back. Michael's not back. And I was from Podium. Exciting description. Not our guys. I think there's a website.
I could read the summary for the race if you wanted to.
Everything's going so well. Okay.
Don't jinx it yet. You can't say anything until like 5 o'clock.
When everything's over.
Yeah. There's a deep sigh of relief from all of you after everything you've been doing. Yep.
That's a great presentation on goals. Thank you.
This one is here ready, there's a toggle right here.
Okay.
And it can stay on the entire time.
Because remember,
Thank you, grandfather.
we can add. Yeah, but good because your voice is soft. I want to make sure people don't miss it. Unless you're singing, then your voice is.
Turn it on now.
Not yet.
Good afternoon, everyone. If we can all take our seats, please. We're going to get started in 2 minutes. If you could please wrap up your conversations and get in your seats, please. Oh, my water. You want a water?
Yeah.
Oh, you got one? Okay. Get started in about 30 seconds. Great, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our session. We had a very delightful and inspiring session that just, keynotes that just ended. And we're back together again. I'm Michael Mendez. I'm a professor of environmental policy and planning at UC Irvine, former faculty fellow and associate research scientist here at the Yale School of Environment, here with my fabulous co-facilitator.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Tolles-O'Laughlin. That's the most complicated thing about me. So if you got that part, everything else is easy. I have one mission, which is to make sure that there are Black people in the future, mostly because that just doesn't happen if you want it to. I'm also the CEO and president of the Environmental Grantmakers Association, which is the oldest table of environmental philanthropy that exists. So you want to blame a lot of people. I know most of them. But I also would say that I think it's a group of people who have a ridiculous amount of optimism for given what we're up against. The other things that I do, I'm the CEO and founder of a global climate grief support organization for people experiencing burnout. This is my 28th year in this work, so got a couple of weeks of experience with the grief and the burnout. So it's really exciting to be a part of this conference. Michael and I are also on the board of the Yale Center for Environmental Justice, which is how we find ourselves here today to open up a conversation around joy with all the audacity you need to mention the word joy in the public on this date at this time. Raise your hand if you're feeling a mix of emotions and joy isn't one of them. Thank you for your honesty. Okay, hey now. I mean, joy doesn't have an assignment, so don't feel bad if it's in there. We have a real honor to be able to open up the second phase of this conversation around what it means to look at the politics, our different positions, and to see that as a strength rather than a weakness. So the first part of the conversation involved a lot of discussion. And I'll ask my co-presenter to say a little bit more about it. But I think the overall idea is that there's a lot for us to do, and we are the people who have to do it. And the good thing is we're not alone. So this is about going to depth, which is why we're having this conversation over a day and a half at multiple levels, so that as we start to ask questions about what it is we're trying to do, who we're doing it with, and what the it actually is, you have a chance to revisit that conversation more than once before you leave this place. So I'll hand it back to my co-facilitator.
Well, thank you for that. I couldn't have said it better. You really hit on the points and did a great summary of what we talked about in the previous session, is that these ideas that you put forward into the world, into society, are intentional. You have intent in what you want to do. And with the theme of this conference, joy takes an intentional practice. And it's a struggle, it's a challenge, it's an exercise to achieve that joy, whatever it may mean. For me, joy means to be in community with everyone, to learn from one another. But we're going to use that inspiration and those thoughts later on today to talk about these issues of the political and cultural divides. And as Tamara did in the other session, push you to think bigger. And that's a great idea. Like you said so eloquently, that's a great idea, but how can you push that even further? So we're all gonna push a little bit harder in this session. But before we go into that and introduce our great speakers, we do have a sacred practice exercise that Sam will take over.
Thank you so much to our panelists, and good afternoon. It's good to be back with you. For those who weren't here this morning, my name is Sam King. I work with the Yale Forum on Religion and Ecology, and I was asked to help facilitate some of these sacred practices. This afternoon's practice is going to be more of a meditation. And again, this is invitational, so you're welcome to participate if you would like, but you should also feel like you don't need to participate. And also, there's certainly no spiritual or religious background expected for this practice. So you can enter into it from however you might like. But again, it's invitational. And this practice is called Joy Rooted in the Body. So I invite you to adopt a comfortable seated posture and to gently close your eyes, if that feels okay for you, or to simply soften your gaze a few feet in front of you. Take a moment to settle into this space, into how your body feels in this space. And then just start to notice the breath. Just notice. No need to change anything. Feel where the air comes in at the tip of your nose, up through the nostrils, and then down to the lungs. And maybe our expanding diaphragm. And exhale. Feel your body soften. Just simply tune into these sensations as you continue to breathe. Simply noticing what is present in our body. I invite you to consider what it is you want to breathe in and what you want to release. One offering is in your mind to repeat, breathing in, I receive life. Breathing out, I am grateful. Or feel free to modify this mantra in a way that resonates for you. Continue this intention for the next few breaths. I invite you to let your thoughts turn to all of those with whom you share your breath. Those in this room who are breathing this very same air. All those creatures on this earth who share the same atmosphere. Remembering that you can only breathe this air because it is exhaled, as it were, by plants. Allowing this awareness and perhaps even gratitude to grow and encompass all the sources of your life. The sources that are more than you know, more than you could ever possibly know. And notice anything that changes in your body as you think about this deep-seated connectedness. And now turning once more to the specific, to you. I invite you to turn your mind to a joyful memory. One recent or from your past. A joyful memory that is powerful enough that you can recall it vividly. Take a moment to see if you can sink into this joyful experience. And allow it to settle over you and fill you up. Where are you in this experience of joy? What is happening around you? Who is with you? Human and more than human? What do you see in this moment? What sounds of joy are coursing through you? What can you smell? What can you taste? And what can you touch? How does your body feel as you meditate on this experience of joy? Where does the joy live in our body? Is it an expansion of the chest, the heart space, a lightness or ease? Can you summon that feeling now? See if you can access that feeling from then. See if we can recall that in our present experience. Just noticing how our body feels. Noticing the breath. Noticing if there's any tension we may be holding that has maybe softened as we recall this deep-seated joy. Allowing this joy to come into our being. And just staying with that moment, that sensation, for a few more breaths. And when you're ready, you can slowly flutter your eyes open. You can wiggle your arms and feel your legs like the great trunk of a tree rooted to our earth. And just coming back into this space and bringing forward with us that experience of connectedness and joy that is available to us. And I thank you, everybody, for participating, and look forward to bringing that experience with us as we engage our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you happen to fall asleep during that period, you are the star player of the afternoon. Because that means you not only found some rest, you took it. That's a masterclass. I'll be at your TED Talk after this. We are excited to move into the panel discussion phase, where some really incredible people are going to talk to us about what it means to find, experience, and experiment with joy. But I'll hand it over to my co-facilitator to say a bit more.
Sure. So we're going to spend the next 18 to 20 minutes learning in community from these two important stakeholders that are on the at the front lines of finding joy, particularly in times that can be divisive or in crisis. So we're going to spend this time learning from them, and then afterwards we're going to have a breakout groups, probably about 5 or so. We do have some students here that will facilitate that, and we'll spend about 30 minutes doing that, and then we'll come back as a community together to report back. So that's sort of the outline for this session. And
I think we should invite our guests to introduce themselves, for one. Then I think you should talk a little bit about yourselves, and then ask each other a couple of questions about what brought you here and what you want people to know. Because, you know, we're free people today. So let's do what feels good. Thank you.
Amazing. All right, I just turned my mic on. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, hello. I'm enjoying seeing some familiar faces, finally. It's great to be here. My name is Grace. I am currently, first and foremost, a student at Yale College. I'm a junior. But I'm also, you know, an environmental person. I'm from Montana, and I have a fellow Montanan who's nodding very vigorously at me. We went to middle school together. And I am a plaintiff in the constitutional climate lawsuit held versus state of Montana. So I'll just give a little, appreciate it. I'll give a little background about like what exactly that is, because it's kind of a vague term. So for me, the experience started my sophomore year of high school. I was kind of dabbling in environmental work. You know, I was doing trying to reduce plastic waste in my hometown, but it really just wasn't getting any traction. I was 15, people weren't super enthused about listening to me, and so I was becoming frustrated and starting to try to look for ways, is that my hair, to kind of engage at a broader level. And it just so happened that this incredible opportunity fell right into my lap, and I will forever be grateful. It's still a little bit unclear how I became a plaintiff in the case. I don't remember. It happened though.
That sounds a little bit illegal.
That's not what I meant. No, I just, I know that at some point I heard about the case and I emailed the attorneys, but I don't know where I heard about it or from who. Anyways, I started emailing the attorneys. I became a plaintiff in this case at age 16. And we filed the lawsuit the same week that COVID hit. You all might remember that week pretty well. So that was March of 2020. And there's 16 youth in the case from all over Montana. At that time, we ranged in age from 2 to 18. And now that means we're about 6 to 22 or something like that. So I'm right in the middle. The case is based on the Montana Constitution, which is very unique and very wonderful. It was written in the early 70s, so it's very new as far as constitutions go. And in it, along with the right to life, property, equal protection of the law, all the things that we're very used to and grateful for, there's also the unique right to a clean and healthful environment. that was written into the Constitution. And I didn't know about that before I joined the case. It's not something we talk about a lot in Montana, but I do think that it is representative of Montana's culture in a way that almost nothing else is, where, even above and beyond all political divides, we come back to the land and the place that we live as central to our life and our experience. I'll come back to that more later. That's kind of my main point. So the premise of the case, and I'm not going to go into legality. I don't know who here is lawyers or who wants to talk about law, but I'm happy to after. But the premise is that in promoting fossil fuel development in Montana, the state government is perpetuating the climate crisis and thus infringing on our constitutional rights. So we went super fast through the court process. It only took like 4.5 years. And so we went to trial, not this past summer, but the one before, 2023. We spent about 10 days in trial. I got to testify on the first day, which, I was pretty nervous. It's kind of a weird experience. And then I walked up and I sat down, I got sworn in, and I realized that I had 20 minutes to say whatever I wanted to the judge, to the defense attorneys representing my state government, and to a courtroom full of supporters. There were hundreds of people that came to trial, which was very cool. And in that moment, I realized just how powerful of a platform I had just for those 20 minutes. And I also realized I couldn't do anything wrong, because my job in this case is to tell the truth about how I've been impacted by climate change, about Montana, about what I care about. And I think we've all been in that position of knowing just exactly what we're motivated by. And it is a privilege to have been able to say that, in court, to have that on the record, which is pretty cool. Fast forward a couple months, August 2023, we won the case, which was super exciting. Yes, I was actually en route back to school, and I woke up to a text from my attorneys, and I started crying. But the decision from Judge Seeley is one of the most remarkable decisions in terms of what's actually in it, because not only did she go through all the facts, which is really important to get all the facts about the climate into the legal record, right, to set precedent for other cases. She also addressed the claims of each of the plaintiffs individually. So my name and my concerns are addressed in her 100-page findings, which is a very long finding. And so, again, just that sense of being recognized legally was incredibly empowering. The state, unfortunately, was less keen on the decision, and they appealed, naturally, to the Montana Supreme Court. And so we had oral arguments this past summer, and we're waiting on a decision from them. And keep an eye out, because we expect it by the end of the year. So, yes. Since then, there have been other great cases that are following in these footsteps. So there was a decision in Hawaii. The case brought by the same law office as mine. Is called Our Children's Trust. They're an incredible organization. Yeah, truly love them. And in Hawaii, the government settled with the plaintiffs before trial. And I want to use that as a way to illustrate the two different paths that people in power can take. You can fight the people, like Montana. You can fight them all the way up to the Montana Supreme Court. You can disparage them in the media and call them, well, I won't get into that. Or you can settle with the people, with the youth who are asking you to take responsibility. In Hawaii, the Department of Transportation was the defendant, and they are designing a clean transportation plan for all of the islands that will be overseen by the courts and by the plaintiffs to get to zero, not net zero, emissions in the next 20 years. So that was a different type of win. Yes, go Hawaii. So there's kind of two pieces I want to pull out of my experience in the case and offer them as reflection for this space and the conversations we've been having. The first is the role of youth, which is naturally what everyone always asks me about this case. But I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of emotion about the role of youth in climate work. some of which has been challenged today actually by the power of kind of the intergenerational conversations that we're having. I think because a lot of my emotion is like, this should not be a problem for youth. We should not be involved in this. We should not be centered in this. This should have been solved 30 years ago or more. But I'm realizing with kind of the interdisciplinary, the interconnectedness of all these issues, and that kind of transcends decades, transcends these generational boundaries. Still, I'd like to say, like, something that I've noticed, not in this space, but in other climate spaces, is the tendency to give youth a platform and to focus so much on giving youth a platform and then to not really listen to what they're saying. Because I feel like, you know, nuance aside, youth have made our position pretty clear on what we want to have happen. And it's not really quite happening. And I know that's been happening for generations, but I think particularly on the, you know, emissions, fossil fuels, like there's a pretty basic ask there, right? And so I applaud you all of the non-youth generations who are...
You mean the future?
Yeah, the future me, yes. I really am genuinely very grateful for all of you who are actually doing what we ask and dedicating your life to this, because there is so much performative activism and performative responses and performative listening to youth, and it's really, really heartwarming to see people who are actually taking that to heart. So thank you all. The other thing I want to address is the whole notion of politics, which is a big one right now. But I mentioned earlier that Montana has this very particular culture of conservation and belief in the value of the outdoors. I mean, it's so ingrained in, so it's such a rural population. My dad's a farmer, huge ranching communities, but also hunting, fishing, skiing. Like, everything is about the outdoors. And we grow up, I think, because it's so rural, with an awareness of the outdoors and an awareness of how we depend as humans on the outdoors. And so that persists despite the politics that have invaded that space over the last couple decades. And for me, when I'm working in Montana, my goal is I know that the word climate will get me kicked out of a room. I know that the word justice brings up a whole lot of things that a lot of people don't want to talk about there. And in some ways that are, that can be less relevant or feel less relevant to people who are, working in coal. They're thinking justice is this whole liberal concept that doesn't apply to them at all. And my view is justice for you is making sure you have a job in 6 years. And so I guess what I ask of you is two things. On the front of youth and how we talk about generations, I just ask that you be conscious of that based on what I said earlier. And usually I would have a harder ask for people. I'd be like, do your job and stop centering youth. But you all are already doing your job, so I don't have to tell you that. But I appreciate your conscientiousness about responsibility and how we carry that through generations. And on the political front, I guess I ask that people see political divides. Yes, they are frustrating, and yes, they absolutely can inhibit action. But I do think, given where we are in a political space right now, they also might be the only opportunity we have to move forward. If we can find a way to use language that transcends that is more about the individuals, about our values, about our love for the outdoors, about whatever it is that we can find common ground on. And if we can ignore the climate language and we can talk about the economy instead, or whatever it is that actually helps us move forward, I think that might be the key to seeing change in the next 4 years. So we shall see how that goes. But I just wanted to include that piece of talking across the political divide as we continue to talk about how we as an environmental community, as a justice community, interact. I want to remember that is not just us, that is not just the liberal space, that is also other people, even if they don't know it yet. Thank you.
So, Uncle, you opened up the plenary that started just before this, and in our prep, we talked a little bit about how environmental joy is kind of a tricky thing to talk about given how much time has passed. Because we heard from one voice amongst many in the youth part of this conversation. Can you talk a little bit about what's good, what's triggering, and what it means to hear joy as the platform for talking about this big project, the group project we're all involved in?
For me, it started a long time ago. Me and my father, we took our boat, and my mother wanted to come along because she wanted to make tea from the big ice. So we traveled 300 kilometers by our little boat to a big wall, just like this one here.
I'm going to pause you for 1 second. It sounds like you're not being heard.
No, it's exactly.
Well, yeah, no.
I had to get so used to
No,
these
that's
things.
fine. It's just.
Can you say something? Just one word? And I will see if they can hear you back there. Go for it.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on.
1966, my father and I, we took my mother 300 some kilometers into the fjord, a wall of the big ice like this, probably a couple of kilometers thick. That's about 6,000 feet. A real wall. And my mother wanted to have fresh tea from the big ice, 1,000,000-year-old ice, which is black. When all the pressure had put all the air bubbles out, the ice becomes black. That shows at least 1,000,000 years old. So we had to go to this big ice, and of course hammer and chisel, and we got black ice for my mother to have tea, ancient tea, and it was so delicious. It was so delicious. That ice is now gone, and it's no longer a couple of kilometers, 6,000 feet, no more. It's probably about 30 feet, and several kilometers in and narrowed because of climate change. So you can still find 1,000,000-year-old ice, but it's way at the bottom, difficult to get hold of, because it's no longer living, it's just standing still. Normally ice is like water, it moves constantly with the high tide and the low tide. Even frozen goes high and low, but you know that science yourself, you from university. So now we cannot do that anymore because of the climate change. And it's really interesting how fast things are melting. And my grandmother, my father's mother's land, is a beautiful little river from the big ice. Now she runs about 1,000,000 liters per second from the melting ice. Can you imagine 1,000,000 liters per second? Niagara Falls, have you heard about Niagara Falls? It's a small river in New York State.
In Canada.
She runs 750,000 liters per second. But the river on my grandmother's land, my father's mother's land, runs more than 1,000,000 liters per second from the melting ice. That means she's melting pretty fast. And it is affecting the earth. You know about Mother Earth? That's the one, the round one in the big sky. And we all live there. Yeah. So we all live on that thing. And it is a beautiful place. But the way we have treated her, we're all suffering. Pretty soon, the dry countries like Arizona will not have no more water. Like Sahara, no more water. And on the other side, it will be too wet. So we cannot use the water. What are we going to do without the water? Some people, professors like you, they say, very big part of me is water. But I can't really drink it. But it's really interesting how much water we contain and how little water is on the earth anymore because we just used it wrong. So now we have to learn how to use water differently. Every one of us. It's just not me. Every one of us, we're going to have to learn to use water differently. If you don't, we will run out of water. And as the native people, and I noticed some native people here, some of the native people are saying that one day we will run out of water. It's unimaginable to run out of water. Only because we did not know how to use it. So I hope that you and your children will learn how to use sacred water in a good way. That we will always have something to drink. We will always have something to cook our food with. Well, those days will be counted if we carry on the way we do now.
Thank you for that. As the saying, life is water, or water is life. And I think both of you brought very different perspectives, but important perspectives from the historical, ancestral type of perspective to how that's impacting how our way of life now and for the future. And then you is really that, of course, that intergenerational prospect, but also really meeting people where they're at and having that human connection to these particular issues. And even when we're in a divisive time, finding that common ground, as you mentioned. So I appreciate both your perspectives, and it gives us a lot to think about as we go into our breakout groups. I don't know if you want to add anything else. Or
I think what's exciting about the conversation is that they're both pretty live. Like both of these things are true simultaneously. We're all in the middle of being invited into a lot of binaries, and a lot of conflict. Like everywhere you look, you're being invited into some form of conflict. So this is another opportunity to take your meditation outside of, like a cute little box, and take it into the world and recognize how many binaries are simultaneous and how much complexity there really is, because we can look backwards and have things that we're joyful about and regret, and things that we look forward and have these same feelings about, a sense of loss that is present, that is future forward, and is looking backwards. And so I think it's really brave of our panelists to come up here and talk a little bit about the things that they're actively grieving and thinking about and have curiosity about. And as we go into this next section, hope that you will do the same. And also, I'll just say it in advance, to raise your ambition. Whatever it is you think you could be doing in the next part of this conversation, magnify it by you and your whole community and the people you already know. Imagine that everything you imagine will be a response to how the prompts will have to happen with other people.
Great. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for giving that inspiration, and to try harder and as we discuss these in community. So we're going to have about 30 minutes. We have until about 4:10 this afternoon to be in breakout groups. And my student facilitators are back there. How many groups are we going to do today?
So groups of 10, ideally, I'd say there's about 80 to 90 people in here, so maybe like 8 or 9 groups.
Yeah.
Feel free to break up in groups of 10 amongst yourselves.
Okay. Yeah, so most of us can stay here, and I think there's some room back in the knob at the back of the building if maybe 2 groups want to go there, but we need to reconvene at 4:10. And your directives that are guiding directives, I should say.
I mean, it is a school. Let's not pretend that there aren't directives.
So the guiding questions that for discussion are, again, centered on hope. What is the opportunity to have hope? The second question, direction. How do we get there? And then finally, action. What's the next steps? So thinking big, brainstorming, thinking, blowing up boxes, trying to imagine our society as a different world, hopefully more equitable world, then the steps needed to get there, and then finally the actual implementation of how you're actually going to implement this and get it to address issues of concern. So again, thank you, and we'll both be, all 4 of us will be circulating around, but everyone reconvene here, please, at 4:10. Thank you.
So your prompts: hope, direction, and action. Thanks, everybody.